Okay, so let's unpack this. For 6 deep dives now, we've been immersed in, well, one of the most frustrating and persistent failures in modern K-12 education. This inability of systems to consistently use the mountains of data they collect to actually make better decisions. We've gone through the why, but now we have to transition. And the core question for this final part of our analysis is, I think, pretty simple. How do we fix this?
What's so fascinating, and I think what drives that frustration you're talking about, is this persistence paradox. I mean, we are not talking about some new problem that's waiting for a new invention. The technology to do this, to merge, analyze, and deliver usable data, it's been around since the 1980s.
Right, and the federal requirements demanding data-driven practice, they've been in place for more than 20 years.
Exactly. And yet you look across districts, you look across states, and the same operational gaps are there.
Right.
Decade after decade, it's this systemic failure to move from just collecting data to actually using it.
And we've established it's not just one thing causing this failure. It's a tangle. It's layers. You've got access issues, skill gaps, these really deep-seated beliefs about kids.
And then systems designed for compliance, not for the classroom. Incentives that actually reinforce bad habits.
Our 9-dimension framework was so essential there because it helped explain why people act the way they do, why an educator might just assume certain data can't be known, or why an administrator might feel so confident without any evidence.
But understanding the assumptions, that's really only the beginning. To move to action, we need 2 things. First, we have to pinpoint exactly where the system is breaking down right now. And second, we have to apply the solutions that we already know work.
And that really brings us to the core of this deep dive. We're providing you with a tool, a necessary one, a diagnostic set of questions. If you are an administrator, an educator, a board member, anyone curious about how effective your local schools are, these are the crucial questions. And if you can't answer them, well, you've found your start line. This is where the work begins.
We have to start with the most fundamental requirement there is for data-driven practice, and that's access to data in usable forms. And I really want to stress that word, usable.
Usable, not just printouts in a binder somewhere.
Not printouts, not reports that take a month for the IT department to run. It means data that is available, merged, and formatted so that educators can explore it themselves without needing a programmer.
Okay, let's walk through this initial data access diagnostic. These are questions you should be able to answer by, say, lunchtime today, not next week. First one, can I easily print a list of students who scored below grade level in reading, together with their specific reading scores?
That's the most basic necessity. An educator needs to be able to run a quick list, see the student, and see the scale of the need. If you can't do a simple filter, you're just relying on memory.
Okay, next level up. Can I get a list of all students who attended our after-school program, along with their attendance records, their grades, and their most recent test scores?
And this is where we start testing the merging capabilities. Because if your after-school attendance data is in one silo and your test scores are in another and they can't talk to each other, well, you have no way to quickly see if those programs are actually helping the kids who go.
Can I produce a list of students who meet specific mixed criteria? For example, students who scored below 22 on the ACT math and have GPAs below 2.5. Wait, why that combination? Why is that so important?
Because relying on a single measure can be really misleading. A student with a low GPA but a high ACT score might just be unmotivated, not struggling with the content itself. But the student who is low on that high-stakes test and low in daily performance, that's a guaranteed candidate for immediate serious intervention. Being able to cross-reference multiple measures gives you true diagnostic power.
Got it. And for the big picture, the administrative view, can you see a single document showing all students, all programs offered across the district, and exactly who is enrolled in each one? This is that comprehensive view that systems have historically just failed to provide, the thing that forced some districts to create that manual laminated scroll we talked about.
And critically, the time check. As you ask these questions, time is the proxy for usability. How long does it actually take to get this information? Is it hours, days, weeks?
Or never.
Or worse, never. If the answer is anything but immediate, then the system is unusable in real time.
So if educators can't filter, sort, and explore their own students' data efficiently, they physically cannot make data-informed decisions. They're forced to operate, so they default. They make assumption-informed decisions instead.
And this failure, it connects directly back to our framework, specifically Dimension A, knowing what can be known. If an educator is operating in State 4, meaning they fundamentally believe this kind of merged, filterable information just can't be known or tracked,
They stop asking for it.
they stop asking. They'll use proxies like demographics or gut feelings, and that data gap just solidifies.
So moving past just basic access, knowing who needs help is only half the equations, right?
Yeah.
You also have to know what help is available and, maybe more importantly, who is actually receiving it. And this brings us to those critical questions about service alignment.
Alignment is where the rubber meets the road. I mean, if you have a Ferrari and you're filling it with the wrong fuel, you don't go anywhere. If you have great programs but they're serving the wrong kids, the results are zero.
So let's get specific. First question, what interventions are available in my building? And crucially, who are they for? Defined not by race or language, but strictly in terms of specific, measurable academic objectives.
If the criteria aren't objective, alignment is impossible from the start. And that leads right to the next question. Do all staff members share the same clear understanding of each program's purpose and those objective criteria? If the criteria are fuzzy, alignment just fails instantly.
And how do we keep records? Is there a central verified master roster, or is every provider just keeping their own separate informal paper records? Because if it's decentralized, you can't verify alignment. You can only guess.
And that lack of centralized tracking, it leads to these massive hidden costs and inefficiencies. For example, have we ever found students being pulled for duplicate services? So they're missing core instruction not once, but twice for 2 different remedial programs.
And on the flip side of that waste problem, have we ever found students getting intensive remedial services who were already performing significantly above grade level?
If you cannot answer these 6 questions, you cannot verify if your multi-million-dollar intervention system is reaching the right students. Full stop. This is where that shocking data we talked about comes from. We documented program after program where an 85% mismatch existed.
An 85% mismatch.
Think about that. Most of the students served did not meet the stated objective program criteria.
85%. That's not a statistical error. It's a colossal operational failure. It's an ethical catastrophe. You're wasting resources, and worse, you are wasting the time of students who desperately need help but are getting the wrong service or none at all.
And that failure is the perfect definition of Dimension B, what we call guess and check, or not check. If staff are in State 3, just guessing who qualifies, or State 4, using demographics as a lazy proxy for need, that mismatch is guaranteed. Alignment only happens when you're in State 1 or 2, running actual lists from actual data to confirm the fit and then checking it regularly.
Okay, let's shift the focus now. From individual knowledge and alignment to the foundation underneath it all. Infrastructure. Beyond what people know or can do, are your systems fundamentally designed to succeed, or are they designed to fail? This is where systemic change becomes, well, mandatory.
It has to be, because if the underlying plumbing is flawed, providing training to individuals is ultimately futile. We need to look at the environment that either fosters or kills data use.
All right, here are the infrastructure diagnostic questions. First one, does data flow both ways? We know it flows up to the state for compliance, that's required. But does it flow back down quickly and cleanly to the educators who need it? If it only flows up, it's a reporting system, not a data system.
Next, you have to consider the processes. Are your reporting forms designed by people who genuinely understand data use? And can they even be completed accurately by the staff who have to fill them out? If the forms are confusing or ask for metrics that are hard to track, you guarantee you're getting garbage data.
Speaking of metrics, do the metrics you're required to report on, or that your purchase curricula promise, do they actually exist? Has anyone ever verified that assumption? Or are you just reporting on something that's only tracked theoretically?
And this next question, this one really reveals the organizational culture around data. When someone asks a question that reveals a genuine flaw in the system, they ask for a data point and discover it doesn't exist.
Right.
Is the immediate response to fix the flaw? Or is the response to question, criticize, or even punish the person who dared to ask the inconvenient question?
That's the difference between an organization that learns and one that just survives. And finally, on infrastructure. Are the products you're purchasing, the tests, the curricula, the interventions, are they validated by people with real statistical expertise? Or are they just being sold by people who happen to have great relationships with decision makers?
If the underlying systems reward complacency, if they punish critical questions, require reporting of non-existent metrics, or only allow data to flow one way, then training individuals is like polishing a broken engine. System correction is absolutely mandatory before any individual skill improvement will ever stick.
Okay, that was the diagnosis, and I know that felt heavy. But here is the hopeful, powerful truth. The solutions are not mysterious. They are not theoretical. They are the exact same proven techniques that have been used successfully in data academies and high-performing schools for the last 2 decades. We know what works.
Yes, we absolutely do. We can break down the transformation into 7 core requirements. This is the what would it take to move from that 85% mismatch to genuine data-driven practice.
Number 1, provide data access. What does that mean in practice?
It means breaking down the silos. You pull the data from the different systems, you merge it, you recode it for clarity, getting rid of those internal codes nobody understands, and then you format it specifically for educator use. You guarantee that two-way flow, down for use, not just up for compliance.
Number 2, build data literacy. And are we talking about teaching teachers statistics 101 here?
No, we're talking about targeted literacy. Teach them what percentages mean in context, and help them clearly distinguish between changeable service indicators, so things we can actually influence, like who gets tutoring, and unchangeable demographics, which is just who the student is. That stops the fatalism. It focuses energy on levers that work.
Number 3, replace harmful frameworks.
This is fundamental. We have to stop training educators in any theory that teaches them that some children can't learn because of who they are or where they come from. You replace those deficit narratives immediately with evidence-based frameworks.
Number 4, fix the systems. So this gets at all those infrastructure failures we just talked about.
Exactly. Design accurate forms that staff can actually complete. Demand that all required metrics truly exist and are tracked. Reward staff who ask the good, hard questions, and critically, vet every single product based on statistical proof of efficacy, not just a good sales pitch.
Number 5, create accountability for alignment.
This means every single program, from gifted services to math intervention, must be required to document precisely who they serve against their stated objective criteria. Then you check, you adjust. You never, ever just assume alignment.
Number 6, evaluate for real. This is about measuring success, not just activity.
It requires collecting robust baseline data before programs begin. You measure outcomes against that baseline, you compare results, and you use that evidence to change or even end programs that just are not working. If you don't measure the outcome, you can't guarantee the investment.
And finally, number 7, build infrastructure. This is about dedicated human support.
This means creating a dedicated central role, often filled by outside contractors at first, whose entire job is to make data usable for educators. They are separate from the teams focused purely on compliance reporting. They are the data translator, the person who makes sure the data flows to the people who need it most.
This is so important because it's not some list of vague ideals. It's a list of proven fixes. We have seen this transformation happen in real time. We've seen principals who, instead of identifying 1 or 2 kids for an advanced track, were able to find and successfully move 50 students because they finally had objective data to challenge their assumptions.
We have seen service alignment dramatically improve, moving from that documented 15% alignment all the way up to 85% alignment just by implementing these diagnostic checks and fixes.
And maybe most significantly, we have seen achievement gaps close by 11% with no new programs. Just better, smarter, more efficient use of the data that was already there. The resources were there all along, they just weren't reaching the right students.
The transformation is absolutely possible. It just requires understanding the depth of this data gap, understanding the behavioral assumptions that maintain it, and, well, a willingness to implement these known, proven changes. You truly cannot fix what you don't understand, but we have to end on the most stubborn and persistent barrier we have faced across 3 decades, the confidence without evidence pattern. Every single district, every principal, every department head we started with told us they were absolutely confident their services were perfectly aligned. They believed the data would confirm they were serving the right students.
They were confident. And then they would pull the data using these diagnostic questions, and the data would expose that 85% mismatch. High potential kids overlooked, duplicate services, remedial students who were already proficient.
And what's even more frustrating is that the psychological pattern persists over time. Educators who were initially hostile to the process, who fought the idea of checking alignment, will often claim years later that things used to be bad. But they are sure they have fixed everything now. They're confident it's all operating perfectly.
Without having looked. They haven't run the list. They haven't checked the evidence of the current program alignment against the stated criteria. They believe it's better. The confidence remains regardless of the data or the complete lack of it.
And that really is the final challenge we pose to you. We need to check. Not assume, not believe, not feel confident. We need to check. Run the list of students scoring below grade level and see who is actually receiving intervention. Pull the placement rosters and verify they match the established criteria. Collect the pre and post data and verify if your programs are working.
The data exists, the tools and the solutions exist, and the diagnostic questions we've outlined, they aren't hard to answer. If you're willing to dedicate the infrastructure and the cultural will to answer them, the only question left after all this work documenting the problem is whether we are truly willing to look. What stands out to you as the absolute first thing that needs to be checked in your world?